welcome to another segment of our mental health moments. My name is Linda Golick. I'm the health and wellness consultant here at Bellin Health, and I am so pleased to have back with us today our licensed behavioral health therapist, Pam Baranchak. Hi, Pam.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Really excited for our topic today. So, we thought, Pam had the idea actually to spend a little time talking about growth mindset. And if you haven't heard that term before, we have talked about it on this program in little ways. It's been mentioned here and there. But today we're going to take maybe a little deeper dive into growth mindset. What is it? How do we get it? Why do we care about it? And Pam is going to help us do that. So I know, Pam, when we were first talking about this topic, we were talking about how we often talk about we're concerned about having growth mindset in our kids. And so sometimes the focus goes there and we forget to potentially really talk about ourselves as adults. So first of all, let's start out by just helping our audience learn what is growth mindset? Like, how do we define it?
Yeah. So growth mindset is it's kind of a way of thinking about things, which is a mindset. So a long time ago, 70s, 80s, which doesn't sound like that long ago, but in reality is a while back, we people used to believe that the brain cells that we had were the brain cells that we were going to keep, and that we were just kind of the way we were. And so when testing was done on kids, they'd be put into tracks. So there was like the track of kids that maybe these are the good readers, and then these are the bad readers, and then these are the gifted and talented kids. And so people were kind of put into these tracks for learning. And really that has an impact on a lot of different things. But what we've learned through research is that our brains aren't fixed. We're not just kind of stuck with the brain cells that we're born with. Our brain keeps developing cells and neurons. And the more we learn, the more our brain expands, and we can do things that we couldn't do in the past. Um, so when we're thinking about can I do this, can I not do this, a lot of times we just want to include that word yet, that maybe I haven't been able to be a good reader thus far, but there's still that opportunity for me, even if I'm in my 70s. I just maybe need to connect with a teacher that can teach me. So being able to just recognize that even if we aren't naturally gifted or talented at something, that doesn't mean that we're never going to be able to be good at that. We can put that word yet there.
I love that because I think it's so powerful when we consider what do we tell ourselves every day? Like truly, you know, who's with you all the time? Yourself. And what are
Mhm.
you telling yourself? And what you tell yourself, you end up believing. So if you tell yourself, I'm not good at reading, or I'm never going to learn this, or I'm not a math person, whatever it happens to be. Well, then you're putting yourself in that tunnel. You're putting
Mhm.
yourself in that tunnel, and you're really getting a self-proclaiming prophecy by saying that.
Right.
So what you're really saying is it all starts with that. We really have to be looking at really what we're telling ourselves. So when we change that, when we're able to maybe get our hands around that growth mindset a little bit more, what does that look like for people?
Oh, I think that it just opens up so many doors and opportunities. Um,
Mhm.
if if we could imagine a goal that we have, there's a kind of like a three-step process, right? Like there's this idea that I might have this idea that this goal is possible, but it's possible for somebody else. Or maybe I believe that it's possible for me, but I just don't know how. Or maybe I choose to believe that this is inevitable for me. It's inevitable that I'm going to
Mm.
achieve this goal. And now I just have to figure out what is the strategy. And I think that belief that this goal is inevitable, this really opens up the opportunity for us to do whatever it takes to make that a reality for us. If we run into a
Mhm.
roadblock, we don't view that as a stop sign anymore. We view it as an obstacle, that
Mhm.
we get to find a way to work through and work around. It doesn't
Mhm.
change our goal. It just gives us a little bit of a detour on how to get there.
Mm-hmm. What's the power in saying it? Because I can even remember there have been times in my life where I have declared something. I have said I am going to do fill in the blank. And this was even something I did as a younger child. I kind of remember this saying, I'm going to go to college. And there were people in my life that told me, why do you think you're going to go to college? And they questioned it and whatever. But I made that statement and I really did believe that statement. What's the power in that when people kind of voice it and they proclaim, this is what I'm doing or this is what I'm going to accomplish?
Yeah. It, the more our brain hears anything, the more it believes it. Have you ever
Mm.
had this experience where maybe you bought a new car and you're super excited, you just get this brand new, let's say a gray car, and then you drive out of the lot and all of a sudden everyone on the road has that same car and the same color. And you're like, wait a minute, where did this come from? All these people have the same car. Our brain has something called our reticular activating system. And
Mm.
it's the part of our brain that really kind of filters out what is important information. It works kind of like a smartphone system, how when you look up an ad for something, all of a sudden you get a ton of ads on that. Our brain figures out what it is that we're interested in, what direction we're moving in, and it will filter everything else out. So if I'm
Mm.
telling myself I'm going to go to college, our brain will find evidence that makes that statement true.
Mm.
Whereas if I'm telling myself, oh, why, I'm never going to lose that weight or I'm never going to
Mm.
be a good reader, our brain will find evidence that makes that true too. So
Mm.
we get to program the direction that our brain focuses with the things that we tell ourselves, with the thoughts that we're having. So saying those things out loud becomes really important.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Cool. So then, we think about, okay, so we're really looking at how do we embrace this growth mindset? Why is that important? And particularly, why does it help us in terms of mental health?
Well, the opposite of a growth mindset is a fixed mindset. So, a fixed mindset is kind of this belief system that I'm either good at something or I'm not. I'm either a success or I'm a failure. It's really kind of black and white. So, if I'm not doing something so well now and I'm telling myself I'm no good, I'm not good enough, I'm a failure, I'm never going to be good at that, those messages, we believe the things that we hear, right? So if we're sending ourselves those negative messages, it's really going to have an impact on our self-esteem, our self-worth, our ideas about what's possible for us in the future. So if we're adopting more of that growth mindset that,
Yeah.
okay, this is challenging for me right now, and I'm learning as I'm going, and I can do this and I can move forward, that also sends a really empowering message to ourselves that
Mhm.
I haven't done this, but I haven't done it yet. It doesn't mean that it's not possible or that I'm not capable. So we want to really be
Mm.
selective and intentional about the messages that we're sending to ourselves. That has a huge impact on mental health.
I think it kind of connects to what we were talking about last month. And last month, we were really talking about viewing stress in a different way so that you view it as beneficial, and then your body and your mind will take it as beneficial. So I'm feeling like this is kind of along the same lines.
Just kind of that reframing of
Mhm.
things. On my way to work today, I heard a song. It's the first time I've heard it. It's by AJR and it's called 100 Bad Days.
Mm.
And the way that the words go, it says, I have 100 bad days, but then those bad days turn into 100 good stories. If I have 100
Ah.
good stories, I'm really popular at parties. So now I'm not afraid of bad days anymore. And I
Yeah.
think that if we can do that, if we can kind of identify, um, eh, not always finding not so much just trying to find the good, but trying to find the opportunity in situations, and the opportunities for growth, the opportunities for learning, the opportunities for expanding our view on things.
One of the things I think about too when we think about growth mindset is kind of um embracing the fear of failure. So sometimes people may be, I don't want to do that. I don't want to try that. I'm afraid to do it because I might fail. And then
Mhm.
that holds them back. What I've learned over time for myself is that anything is worth trying. Anything's kind of worth diving into. And I've accepted the fact that there's some things I'm going to be really good at. There's some things that are going to be natural for me, and there's some things that are going to be a little bit tougher. But it's not a bad thing if I'm not perfect at it. What's good is to try, because that's what's making you grow. That's what's making you, learn different things.
Yeah. There definitely, I think there's kind of the joke that I hear people saying like, "Oh, you get an A for effort," right? But definitely, I think that there's definitely some truth in that. It takes a lot of courage to try something that we're not
Mhm,
100% sure we're going to be good at.
mhm.
And if we never try new things, we're never going to find out if we could be good at it. And so being able
Yeah.
to trying those new things, it makes us a more interesting person. It gives
Mhm.
us those stories to tell. And we might find something that we really love that we never imagined we would enjoy.
I think we always encourage our kids to do this, right? Like, we encourage our kids to try new things. And so why should we be excluded as adults to not have to try and do new things? I mean,
Hmm.
truly, when you think about, ultimately, you're going to be learning stuff till the day you die. You're always going to be learning something because there's always things that are going to change. Just look at the way technology really impacts our world and things like that. We're just constantly being bombarded with those changes. So you had told me, Pam, about a acronym that was helpful in terms of growth mindset. And I actually just watched his TED Talk. It was Preston Pugmire. Why don't you
Hmm.
tell us a little bit about that? And if you have questions for Pam, please put them in the chat about growth mindset or anything else you want to ask her. It is open, so feel free to chat those in. But yeah, tell us more about that acronym, Pam.
Yeah. So Preston Pugmire is a person that was kind of a struggling musician for a really long time. And then he started getting a couple of gigs and changing up his presentation a little bit to where in his performances he'd add in just a little bit of a kind of a motivational or inspirational piece or component. And it ended up leading him to making a podcast, and the podcast debuted at number one in the world in his category, which I think was life coach category.
Mhm.
So he has this acronym FACT, FACT, and the F stands for focusing on your wins. So often when we set a goal, when we're trying something new, it's so easy to focus on just that big space between here I am now, and there's this big space between where I want to be, and it becomes really overwhelming and seems difficult. So if we can just focus on those little wins that move us in that direction, sometimes even just having the courage to try that first time, right? That's a huge win, actually.
Mhm.
So being able to focus on the wins can help propel us in the direction of what it is that we want to achieve. The A stands for asking useful questions. Getting back to that idea that our mind, the more we hear anything, the more we're going to start to believe it. He acknowledges that anytime we ask our brain a question, it will come up with an answer. So if I'm asking myself, oh, why can't I lose that weight? My brain will say something like, well, Pam, because you're a loser, or you're not trying hard enough, or, like it'll give me some sort of an answer. Or if I say, oh, why can't I climb Mount Everest? My brain will have an answer for that. So if I'm asking myself useful questions, like, what would my life look like if this goal was inevitable for me? What would it look like if I was planning out my meals? What would my life look like if I was making healthy choices? All of a sudden, our brain is going to be thinking in that direction and answering those types of questions. And those are actually going to
Mhm.
propel us towards what our goal is. Um, the C stands for coach, and he recommends that everybody get one. He says that if we are trying to make any change on our own, it's like the slowest, most painful way to do anything.
Mm.
He reminds us
Mhm.
that even Olympic athletes, the best in their field, they have coaches that they work with.
Mhm.
So if we can get some sort of a coach, some sort of a mentor that's maybe made a similar change or accomplished the goal that we're trying to work towards, they can definitely give us some ideas. And things are usually a lot more fun if we're working on them with other people anyway. And then the T stands for taking things off our plate. A lot of times when we have a goal, we want to make it a priority. If we can just simplify our life, get rid of some of that busyness that doesn't need to be there, it can help us propel towards our success as well.
Yeah. So often people use the excuse really of, I don't have enough time. I don't have enough time. And we know of the miraculous stories that we've heard, right? I mean, there are people that went to law school while they were getting cancer treatment. There are people that have, raised children by themselves while working full-time and part-time and still trained for a marathon or, whatever it happens to be. We all get to choose how we spend our time. And often you can start to, I've even had people like write out how they spend their time when they talk about, I don't have time for good nutrition, or I don't have time for exercise, or whatever it happens to be. And I'll actually give them like a calendar with 7 days and have them fill out how they're using their time. And that's actually really kind of a light bulb goes on with people sometimes when they do that, because they start to realize, oh my gosh, I'm spending 3 hours every night watching TV.
Yeah.
I'm spending, whatever it happens to be, whatever. And not that anything isn't valuable, but it's just an opportunity for all of us to really evaluate, well, how am I spending my time? But how do I want to be spending my time? So it's just that opportunity for all of us to really reflect.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that I have probably spent over 45 minutes having a conversation about how I don't have time to go and work out. And really that 45 minutes I could have just got a workout in. So
Right. For me, it's always really reflecting on, the media, whether it's, the social media or the Netflix subscription or whatever it is. Sometimes it's just reflecting like how much time are we spending there. So different for everyone, but yeah, interesting stuff. So another thing I just kind of wanted to talk about was really the impact on the brain. So you talked about earlier how in the beginning we kind of believed we were limited with these brain cells, and now we know that this growth mindset can actually grow our brains. Tell us more about that.
Yeah. So our brain uses what we call neural pathways, right? And when I think of a neural pathway, I imagine it like a if I have an overgrown field and I've got a path through that field, that when I go through that field, I walk through that field on that same path, and it's really well worn and it's pretty smooth. If I've had a certain mindset or a certain thought process, my brain is going to go right down that path really quickly because it's just habit, it's muscle memory. That's what's been developed. I can create a new pathway. I can, just like I could walk in a different direction through the field. The thing is that new pathway, it's not going to be as smooth. It's going to be still overgrown. I'm going to have to walk on that new path over and over and over and over again in order for it to get nearly as smooth as the old one. And I think that that's the piece that kind of trips people up, is they'll say, well, I keep going back to like that old thinking, or I keep going. Well, that's natural because that old pathway, it's a lot easier to go down. When we catch ourselves going down that old pathway, what we want to do is just sort of redirect ourselves to go down that new path, and just to be really intentional whenever we can to go down that new path. And that's how we develop new neural pathways. So if I tend to be like, if I've had years and years of maybe being sort of critical of myself, and that's my old path, I can change that. I can introduce affirmations into my life. I can challenge negative thoughts. I can build that new pathway, but it takes a lot of intention. And it takes a lot of repetition and probably a lot of patience with myself, because it is natural to kind of slide back, and then we can just gently bring ourselves over to that new path again without beating ourselves up. for sliding back.
You know, when you and I were talking about this session, you had the greatest illustration I have ever heard. And it has so stuck with me. And I so want to share this with our audience. So we were talking about taking the tag off of the mattress or off the pillow or whatever. We get these things and it says, do not remove. And what was your illustration on that, Pam? Please share that with everybody.
I think we were talking about just how we kind of give ourselves these labels, right? We have these labels that are pieces of sort of our identity, and it's the way that we view ourselves. And maybe the labels come from us, maybe the labels started somewhere else, and we just kind of decided that we're going to own them and we're going to keep them. And we compare that to the mattresses, that there's that label that says don't remove by penalty of law or whatever. But the part that we always seem to ignore is that it also says except by the consumer. The consumer is allowed to remove that label. And so in my life, I'm my consumer. And if I have these labels that are attached to me, I get to decide, is that label serving me? Am I going to keep that label? Or is that one that I want to remove and get rid of? And we get to choose that.
You know, the other thing that I think is a great reminder of that is you get to choose. So it's not about following what someone else thinks you should do or wants you to do or tells you to do, because at the end of the day, nobody knows us as well as we know ourselves. So I think that was the other part that I took with that label illustration is I get to do that. Yeah. I get to remove that. I get to decide. And I think it's an opportunity to also maybe remove some of the labels we've put on ourselves over time, where we kind of put ourselves into these categories and say, oh, well, I'm this or I'm that, but I'm not this or I'm not that. Remove that label. Decide what you want it to be.
Yeah. One of my favorite essays that I've read is by Sonny Carroll. And Sonny is Sonny. And Carroll, I don't know if there's 2 R's or 2 L's, but it's Sonny Carroll. And it's called The Awakening. And the author does such a really nice job of just kind of illustrating that moment in our life that we kind of just wake up and scream like enough. And we're like enough of the fighting and crying and struggling to just fit into this box of who I think I'm supposed to be or who other people. And we sort of start sifting through all of the ideas and lessons that we've learned in our life about who we should be and how we should act and what we should think and what we should look like and it just does such a nice job of talking through how as adults that is an opportunity we have to just kind of go back and say, what is it that I want? What direction do I want to go in? What direction am I wanting to grow in and move forward in?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Well, again, I welcome you to chat in any questions or comments that you have for us today. As we let people do that, Pam, and we give them an opportunity, anything else that you wanted to share today about growth mindset? Anything that we didn't get to that you wanted to tell our audience today?
When you talk about illustrations, I think that one of the illustrations, actually, it might be in that Preston Pugmore TED Talk that he does a nice job of talking about how when we think about goals and goal setting and how a lot of times we focus a lot on the strategy and we don't give enough credit to mindset. And he compares it to like a tree. How if we think about a tree, the part that we see, the trunk and the branches and the leaves, that is the strategy. And that's what most people notice and think of. But the real strength of a tree comes from its root system. And the root system is just so much more big and vast. And we have to develop a good root system before we can grow the tree. And our mindset is that root system, that our mindset needs to be developed and really strongly, firmly in place in order for that strategy to be able to flourish and for us to go in that direction.
Absolutely. Yeah, could not agree more. And I did see that on his TED Talk, and I thought that is so true. You think of the strength of what holds us up and the potential that it is about the mindset versus, versus that strategy. So I love that idea. Love it. Well, I don't see any questions in the chat for us today, Pam. So I think we will wrap it up. Thanks to all of you for attending today. We really appreciate it. Stay tuned for our next topic in December. Thanks to you, Pam, for coming in these last couple months and being our therapist and really helping us continue to focus on our mental health. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Linda.
You're welcome. Well, have a great day, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.